Mira woke up early as she did every morning. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the sky had a pale golden color. She walked quietly into the small kitchen of her rented apartment. The room was simple and a little old, but she always kept it clean. She made tea, packed a small lunchbox, and then checked on her son. Rafi, he was still sleeping with one arm stretched across the pillow. His hair was messy, and his soft breathing filled the room with calm. Every morning needed planning. Mira worked at a small shop in the market. It was not a big job, but it helped her pay rent and buy food. She had no one else to support her. Being a single mom was never easy, yet she carried every worry alone and tried to hide her stress from Rafi. She wanted him to feel safe and loved. When she woke Rafi gently, he opened his eyes and smiled. That smile always gave her strength. She helped him get ready, tied his shoelaces, and walked him to a neighbor who watched him while she worked. Before leaving, Rafi hugged her and whispered that he would behave well today. She kissed his forehead and then hurried to catch the bus for work. The shop where Mira worked was small and crowded with shelves. She spent long hours standing, helping customers and organizing items. Income was never enough, but she pushed through each day with patience. Her coworkers liked her because she was kind and never complained. Even on the hardest days, she tried to stay calm. Around noon, while Mira was arranging boxes in the storage corner, the shop owner called her. He held a letter in his hand and said that someone had dropped it off for her. This surprised her because she rarely received mail. Bills were usually sent by phone message. She had no close relatives who wrote letters. The envelope was thick, old-fashioned, and had a farm symbol printed on it. Myra felt confused. She waited until her break and then opened it carefully. Inside was a formal notice from a lawyer. The letter explained that her late uncle, whom she had not seen in many years, had left her his farm in his will. Mira felt her heart thump. She sat down slowly on a chair in the back of the shop and read the letter again to make sure she understood it correctly. Her uncle had passed away a few months earlier, and the farm had now officially been transferred to her name. The letter included instructions, keys tied with a small ribbon, and a map showing the location of the property. For a long moment, she simply stared at the papers. She did not know how to react. She remembered visiting the farm as a child. Her uncle was quiet but kind. He loved growing plants and fixing old machines. After she grew older, life pulled her away from that place. She moved to the city, faced her struggles, and lost contact with him. The idea of owning a whole farm felt unreal. She had no extra money, and she barely managed life in the city. Yet maybe this was a chance for change, a chance for a better life for Rafi. She folded the papers and placed them carefully in her bag before returning to work. That evening, after picking up Rafi, she walked home with slow steps. The city was noisy. Buses passed by loudly, people rushed everywhere, and shops had bright lights. She held Rafi's hand and thought about the peaceful image of a farm. Wondered if the place still looked the same, or if it had changed. She wondered if she was strong enough to start over. When they reached home, she cooked simple food and watched Rafi eat happily. She finally told him about the farm. His eyes grew wide with excitement. He asked if there were animals there. He asked if the farm had open fields where he could run. Mira laughed softly. She told him she did not know yet, but they could go and see. That night, she could not sleep. Her mind kept imagining the possibilities. Maybe the farm was in good shape. Maybe she could plant vegetables or keep chickens. Maybe she could save money by not paying high rent. Maybe Rafi could grow up in a peaceful place where the air was fresh and the nights were quiet. By early morning, she had made her decision. She and Rafi would visit the farm for a few days. If it looked safe and livable, they would move there. She packed clothes, basic things, and carried the letter and keys. They took a bus that traveled through long roads lined with trees. Rafi leaned against the window and watched fields passing by. He kept asking how much farther the farm was. Mira smiled at his excitement, but she also felt nervous. What if the house was damaged? What if the place was too far from town? What if she could not manage a farm on her own after a long ride? The bus stopped at a small station near a quiet village. Mira held Rafi's hand tightly as they walked toward the road that led to the farm. Birds chirped in the trees and the air felt fresh. The path was covered with small stones and dry leaves. The walk took longer than she expected, but when they finally reached the gate, Mira stopped and looked around. The farm was large. The house stood at the center of the property and looked old but strong. The roof had faded tiles, and the walls had patches of peeling paint, yet it looked peaceful and alive. A cool breeze moved across the field. Old trees stood like silent guards around the land. Rafi tugged her hand and pointed excitedly at something in the distance. A red tractor stood near the barn, rusty but still standing tall. He ran toward it, shouting, "Mommy, look, the tractor!" His voice echoed across the empty land. For a moment, Mira forgot her worries and smiled quietly. Seeing him so happy made everything feel lighter. She explored the house first. The front door creaked softly when she opened it. Inside, dust covered the floor, but the structure was good. There was a living room with a wooden table, a small kitchen with cabinets, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. The windows opened easily and let sunlight stream in. Mira walked through each room and felt a gentle warmth inside her chest. With some cleaning and repairs, this place could be a real home. Rafi explored the rooms with excitement. He liked the wide windows and the wooden staircase. He told Myra he wanted to sleep in the room that faced the fields. She told him they would clean everything together. After checking the house, Myra walked toward the barn. The large wooden doors needed force to push open. Inside, the air smelled of old hay. Tools were hung on the walls. There were empty crates, a wheelbarrow, and a shelf with jars filled with nails and screws. The red tractor was parked outside near the barn wall. Rafi stood beside it with wonder in his eyes. He touched the metal and smiled as if he had discovered treasure. Mira inspected the barn carefully. It was old but steady. Her eyes moved across the room and landed on a large wooden chest placed near the back wall. It was dusty and had a rusty lock. She wondered what her uncle had kept inside. She looked around and spotted a set of old keys hanging from a hook near the shelf. After trying a few keys, she found one that fit the lock. When the chest opened, she saw notebooks, folded maps, and old photographs. She picked up a notebook and brushed the dust off its cover. Her uncle's handwriting filled the pages. The notes spoke about the farm, crops, and weather patterns. But some pages mentioned strange activity near the land behind the farm. There were mentions of visitors arriving late at night and of trucks stopping near the forest line. Myra felt a mix of surprise and confusion. She had never known her uncle to be involved in anything unusual. Why had he kept these records? What did he want to leave behind for her? She placed everything back carefully and decided to study it later. There was a lot to understand, and the farm had already begun to feel like a place full of stories she needed to uncover. By late afternoon, Mira and Rafi cleaned one room and ate simple food they had brought. As the sun started to set, the sky turned soft orange. Rafi sat near the window and watched the fields glowing in the warm light. He told Mira he liked the farm and wanted to stay forever. Mira stood beside him and looked outside. The land was quiet. There were no loud city buses, no honking cars, and no noise from crowded streets. Only the sound of wind passing through the trees. She felt peace, something she had not felt in a long time. That night they slept on blankets spread on the floor. The house was still dusty, but the silence felt comforting. Mira stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to Rafi's slow breathing. She thought about her uncle, the letter, the chest, and the strange notes. She wondered what secrets the farm held, and why her uncle had left all of this to her. But above all, she felt hope. For the first time in years, she believed life might change for the better. She believed the farm could give her and Rafi a new beginning. As sleep slowly pulled her in, she whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would take care of this place. She would protect it. She would discover everything her uncle had tried to tell her. The next morning began with the sound of birds singing near the window. Sunlight entered the room through the thin curtains and drew soft lines across the wooden floor. Mira sat up slowly, feeling the cool morning air on her skin. She took a moment to remember where she was. The quiet farm, the old house, the fields, and the barn. It felt almost unreal. A day ago, she had been in the noisy city. Now she was in a peaceful place that she had inherited without expecting it. Rafi was already awake. He sat near the window frame with his legs crossed and looked out at the open land. When he saw Mira wake up, he smiled widely and told her he wanted to explore the farm again. His joy warmed her heart. She felt grateful that he liked the place so much. They cleaned the small kitchen area and prepared breakfast with the simple supplies they had brought. They ate bread, fruit, and water. After breakfast, Mira tied her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and decided to explore the barn again. Something about the old wooden chest she had found the previous evening still bothered her. She felt there was more she needed to understand. Rafi followed her, skipping in excitement. On the way, he kept pointing at little things around the farm. A row of small flowers near the fence, a bird that hopped close to the path, the old wheelbarrow leaning against a tree. Mira listened to every word he spoke. This place already felt like a new world for him. When they reached the barn, Mira pushed the doors open. They creaked loudly, but moved easily. Light entered the space and revealed the dust floating in the air. Tools hung neatly on the walls. Wooden beams stretched across the ceiling. Some old sacks sat in a corner. The smell of old hay brought back faint memories of her childhood. She walked toward the wooden chest again. It looked the same as yesterday, covered in dust, but strong. Rafi stood beside her and watched with curiosity. She lifted the lid and looked inside. Notebooks, maps, and photographs were exactly as she had left them. She removed one notebook and sat on a nearby crate. Her uncle's handwriting filled the pages in a steady, neat way. At first, the notes talked about seeds, seasons, weather changes, and farm expenses. But in later pages, the tone shifted. He wrote about trucks arriving near the forest line behind the farm. He wrote about men unloading containers during late hours. He wrote about strange lights near the old fields. None of it sounded like ordinary farming activity. One map caught her attention. It showed the boundaries of the farm and the land surrounding it. Her uncle had circled a particular area behind the barn. Next to the circle, he had written a simple line. "Keep watch here," Mira frowned slightly as she read those words. What had he seen there? What had made him alert? Enough to leave notes for someone who might find them? Later, she wondered if he had wanted her to find these things or if he had simply hoped someone trustworthy would discover them if something happened to him. She placed the notebook down and took one of the photographs. The picture showed a group of men in suits standing near a construction site. They were pointing at something in the distance. In the corner of the photo, there was a man she recognized from news articles in the city. A billionaire named Rowan. He owned many companies and projects across the region. She remembered seeing his name on billboards and magazines. Why would her uncle have a picture of him on the farm? What connection did this place have with someone so powerful as? She turned the pages slowly. Rafi wandered around the barn and pretended to drive the red tractor outside. He made soft engine sounds with his mouth and laughed every time he touched the large wheels. Seeing him happy made Myra feel safe. Yet the stack of papers in her hands told a different story. One full of things she did not understand yet. She lifted another notebook and skimmed through the text. Her uncle had written short lines that looked like observations. He had written dates, times, and descriptions. He wrote about loud truck engines at night. He wrote about men carrying large containers. He wrote about the ground behind the barn being disturbed. He had written one line that bothered her more than anything else. Something is not right here. Mira sat quietly, trying to steady her thoughts. Her uncle had been a simple farmer. He was not the type to imagine things or exaggerate. If he wrote warnings, he must have seen something real, something important, something he felt he needed to track. As she returned the notebooks to the chest, she noticed a small envelope tucked under the pile. She opened it and found a key. It was small, silver, and slightly rusty. She held it up to the light and wondered where it belonged. There were no small locks visible inside the barn. She placed the key in her pocket for later. Rafi came running to her and asked if they could explore outside. She agreed, but she wanted to check the area her uncle had circled on the map first. She took the map with her and began walking behind the barn. The land behind it was quiet. Trees surrounded the boundary, and the grass was taller here. It looked like no one had walked through for a long time. Mira followed the map carefully. It led her to a narrow path hidden between bushes. Rafi stayed close, holding her hand now. The path felt different. Quiet in a strange way. The map showed an X mark near a cluster of old trees. When they reached it, Mira looked around for anything unusual. At first she saw nothing. Just grass, soil, and fallen branches. But after a few minutes of searching, she noticed a part of the ground that looked smoother than the rest. The soil seemed recently disturbed. She knelt down and touched the surface. It felt softer. She pressed harder and felt something solid beneath the soil. With her bare hands, she dug a little. The soil was cool and slightly moist. After removing a few layers of dirt, her fingers touched metal. Her heart beat faster. She dug more until she uncovered a metal box. It was rectangular and covered with rust. She pulled it out and placed it on the grass. Rafi watched closely, curious but quiet. The box had a small keyhole. Mira remembered the silver key in her pocket. She took it out and slid it into the lock. It fit perfectly. She turned it gently, and the lock clicked open. She lifted the lid, and inside she found more documents. These looked official. There were printed reports, handwritten notes, and more photographs. She sat on the ground and began reading. The papers described harmful chemicals. They mentioned illegal dumping on land behind the farm. They mentioned trucks delivering waste in hidden containers. They mentioned a company responsible for transporting the chemicals. The name printed on the documents was one she had seen before. Rowan Industries? Mira felt her breath catch for a moment. She kept reading and found even stronger proof. Photographs of containers marked with the company logo, letters written by her uncle explaining that he had discovered the dumping and had tried to report it. He wrote that he feared someone was watching him and that he needed to hide the evidence till he could find someone he trusted. Mira closed the box for a moment and sat silently. The wind moved through the trees and made soft sounds. She looked at Rafi, who sat beside her, playing with a dry leaf. She felt a mixture of worry and responsibility. Her uncle had tried to protect the land and the people around it. Somehow, fate had brought this responsibility to her now. She knew that keeping this information hidden was not safe, but exposing it without thinking could also bring trouble. She was just a single mother with no power or connections. Yet the truth she had found was too important to ignore. She picked up the metal box and began walking back toward the house. She held it close to her chest, as if she were protecting something delicate. Halfway across the field, she looked back at the hidden area behind the barn. It looked peaceful. But now she knew it held secrets that could change everything. Back at the house, Mira placed the metal box on the table and locked the door. She spent the next hour reading every document carefully. Rafi sat on the floor, drawing shapes in his notebook while she worked. Each line she read made the situation clearer. Her uncle had uncovered something serious. Something that involved powerful people. Something dangerous for the environment and the families living nearby. And now she was the one holding the evidence. As evening approached, shadows grew longer across the fields. The warm light of the sunset entered through the windows. Mira closed the last folder slowly. She knew she had a decision to make. She could not ignore what she found. That night, she lay awake on her blanket. The house was quiet. Outside, the wind whispered in the trees. She looked at the ceiling and thought about the future. She thought about Rafi. She thought about her uncle. She thought about the truth sitting in the metal box. She knew this farm had given her more than a home. It had given her a responsibility, one she had never expected. The next morning began quietly. The soft light of dawn slipped into the small house and touched the wooden floor. Mira woke slowly because she had barely slept through the night. Her mind had been full of thoughts. She kept seeing the metal box in her head, the papers inside it, and the name Rowan Industries printed again and again. She still felt the weight of her uncle's discovery on her shoulders. Rafi was already awake. He sat near the window, holding a small toy car he had found in one of the old drawers. He greeted Mira with a bright smile and told her that he wanted to explore the fields again. Mira hugged him gently and told him they would explore more after breakfast. She prepared simple food and tried to keep her mind calm. But the quiet of the farm made every sound clearer. Every creak of the floor and every brush of the wind made her feel more alert than usual. She had hidden the metal box under the bed for now. She needed time to think about what to do next. After breakfast, they walked outside. The sun rose higher, and the sky became bright blue. Birds flew between trees near the fence. The open land looked peaceful, and for a moment, Mira allowed herself to breathe freely. Rafi ran ahead toward the old tractor again. He touched the big wheels and pretended he was driving across large fields. His laughter echoed across the yard and made Mira smile gently. Even with her worries, she loved seeing him so happy. But as she walked toward the barn, she noticed something unusual. A black car was parked near the farm gate. It looked modern and out of place on the quiet country road. Its engine was off, but the car looked like it had arrived recently. Mira felt her heart tighten a little. She stood still and watched. After a moment, the car door opened and a man stepped out. He wore clean clothes, held a small folder, and carried himself with confidence. He closed the car door quietly and began walking toward the house. Mira straightened her posture but did not move. Rafi stayed near the tractor, unaware of the visitor. When the man reached the yard, he smiled politely and introduced himself. His name was Mark. He said he worked for a land survey office connected to Rohan Industries. He claimed they were checking nearby farms for land updates and boundary reports. Mira listened calmly, but inside she felt uneasy. She had never contacted any office or company since arriving. No one besides the lawyer even knew she had moved here. The man's sudden visit the day after she discovered the documents felt too coincidental. Yet she kept her expression neutral. Mark asked if he could walk around the property to check the land boundaries. Mira politely told him they had just arrived and were still settling in. So she preferred to understand the place first before allowing any surveys. She added that she needed time and would contact the office later if needed. The man nodded but kept glancing around the yard, especially toward the barn. Mira noticed that his eyes lingered on the tractor and then on the field behind it. She felt a small chill run through her. He asked a few more questions. His tone was casual, but Mira sensed something beneath his friendliness. He asked when she had arrived. He asked if her uncle had left anything behind. He asked if she had checked all parts of the farm yet. His questions felt too direct and too curious. Mira answered calmly but gave no details. She kept her voice steady. She did not mention the chest. She did not mention the notebooks. She did not mention the metal box or the hidden path behind the barn. She noticed that the man kept adjusting the watch on his wrist, as if he were waiting for something. His smile never faded, but it felt thin. When he asked if he could look inside the barn, Mira stepped in front of the door and politely said she was still cleaning the place and preferred to handle it herself for now. Something in her voice made him pause. After a moment, he nodded again, thanked her, and walked back toward his car. Before leaving, he looked toward the backfields one more time. Mira followed his gaze silently. When he finally drove away, she let out a slow breath she had been holding without realizing it. She walked quickly toward Rafi and held his hand firmly. The visit had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. She guided him into the house and locked the door behind them. She walked to the bedroom and pulled the metal box out from under the bed. She checked everything inside. Nothing was missing. She sat on the floor with the box in front of her. The papers were still there. The photographs were still there. The notes were still there. Her uncle's handwriting stared back at her. She whispered softly to herself as she read one line again. Someone is watching this place. Now she understood the meaning more clearly. Her uncle had not imagined things. Someone had truly been watching. Someone had been worried that the evidence might reach the wrong hands. Someone still cared about this land for a reason other than farming. Mira placed the papers back inside and closed the lid. She kept the box beside her as she thought. She needed to protect Rafi. She needed to understand how much danger they were in. She needed to plan her next move with care. Later in the afternoon, Mira checked the area around the farm again. She walked along the fence, looked at the road, and scanned the distance for any sign of the black car. Everything seemed normal now, but she could not shake the feeling of being watched. The peaceful silence felt heavier than usual. She walked behind the barn again, following the same path where she had found the metal box. She looked at the ground, the trees, and the shadows stretching across the land. She imagined her uncle walking along this same path, carrying his notebooks, writing down what he saw. She imagined him hiding the box in fear that someone might take it from him. Mira stood still and breathed deeply. She realized that Mark's visit had confirmed something important. Her uncle had been right to hide the evidence. Someone else was searching for it even now. She returned to the house and made tea to calm her nerves. She sat at the wooden table and watched Rafi draw simple shapes on a sheet of paper. He asked her why she looked serious. She told him she was thinking about cleaning the barn. He accepted the answer and continued drawing happily. As evening approached, Mira lit a small lamp and checked the documents again. She read her uncle's messages slowly. He had written about dangerous chemicals and land contamination. He had written about truck routes and hidden deliveries. He had written about feeling unsafe. She remembered the familiar face in one of the photographs. Rowan, the billionaire. She wondered why someone so powerful would have a connection to the hidden activities behind a small farm. Why would a company of that size risk such a thing? Why would they send someone like Mark to check the property the moment she arrived, though? Questions circled in her mind without answers. Night fell quietly. The house felt dim and calm. Rafi fell asleep early after spending the whole day running around outside. Mira sat near the window and looked out at the dark fields. She felt the breeze enter the room through the thin curtains. She listened to the soft sounds of insects. She took slow breaths to settle her thoughts. She knew one thing for sure. She could not handle this alone. Her uncle had tried to expose the truth and had been forced into silence. If she repeated the same mistakes, she might put herself and her son in danger. She needed help, but she needed help from someone she could trust. And in her life, trust was rare. She had lived many years alone. She had relied only on herself. She had met kind people, but none she could trust with something this serious. Still, she knew she needed support. She needed someone who understood the importance of the evidence. Someone who could guide her. Someone who would protect her identity. Someone who could expose the truth safely. As the hours passed, Mira felt more certain of one path. She would contact a reporter. Not someone from a random newspaper, but someone known for honesty. Someone who had exposed wrongdoing before. Someone who put truth above fear. She remembered a reporter she had seen on the local news in the city. A woman known for investigating environmental issues. A woman people trusted. Myra did not know her personally, but she knew that this reporter had helped many. Communities protect their land. The decision brought a sense of calm to her heart. She knew that taking this step would change everything. But she also knew she could not stay silent. Her uncle had believed the truth should come out. She wanted to honor that. As she sat in the quiet room, she placed her hand on the metal box. She whispered a soft promise to her uncle. She would finish what he had started. She would protect Rafi. She would protect the farm. And she would make sure the truth reached the right hands. She felt tired, but she also felt brave. The next morning came with a soft, golden light spreading over the wide farm fields. A light breeze moved through the tall grass, making a calm sound that almost felt like a whisper. Mira woke early, as she always did, since arriving at the farm. Her mind was still heavy with the discoveries from the previous day. The old box in the hidden basement, the documents about land buying, the map showing large, empty areas taken by the rich company, and the strange file with the billionaire's name all filled her thoughts. She moved quietly through her small room, trying not to wake her little son, Aaron, who still slept peacefully. His small hands were holding his toy car, and his gentle breathing made Mira feel a mix of worry and strength. She knew she had to protect him. She knew she had to protect the truth that her grandfather left behind. The farm had become more mysterious each day, but Mira felt that she was now closer to understanding why her grandfather had written those warnings in his notebook. She remembered his words about honesty, about courage, and about never letting the powerful take advantage of the weak. The old man must have seen something, and he had tried to stop it. After washing her face and tying her hair back, Mira went outside. The morning air was fresh, and the sky was soft blue. The sound of birds filled the space around her. But Mira felt no peace. Her mind kept returning to the basement. She had left the documents there, hidden inside the metal box. But something told her she needed to bring them out and keep them safe somewhere else. Before she could move toward the barn, she heard footsteps. When she looked up, she saw the police officer from the nearby town walking through the front gate. His name was Officer Ramon. He had visited the farm before when Myra first arrived. He was a calm man, soft-spoken, respected in the small community. Mira felt her heart race, even though she had done nothing wrong. She forced herself to stay calm and stepped toward him. "Good morning, officer." "Is everything okay?" she asked. He gave a polite nod. "Good morning, Mira. I just came by to check on you. One of the neighbors said they noticed lights on late last night in the old barn. They were worried something might be wrong." Mira felt her chest tighten. She did not want anyone to know about the basement or the documents, but she also knew she could not act strange, or it would raise questions. Yes, I was organizing things. The farm was left unused for a long time, so there is a lot to clean," she replied with a steady voice. Officer Ramon looked around the fields. This place always had secrets. "Your grandfather was a strong man, but he carried many worries. People in town knew he was keeping something safe. They just never knew what." Mira felt a cold wave move down her back. She didn't know if he was saying this casually or if he suspected something. She tried to read his expression, but his calm face revealed nothing. After a short talk, he wished her a good day and left, but the tension remained in her chest. She waited until he was far away, then hurried to the barn. She climbed down into the basement with careful steps. The documents were still there, exactly where she left them. She pulled out the map again. It was old, but clear. The shaded areas were large pieces of land around the farm. Her grandfather had written notes on the side about sudden land buying through pressure methods. It looked like the Billionaire's company had tried to control the entire area. But her grandfather had refused to sell his land. That must have angered them. There were also receipts showing payments made to certain local officials. Mira felt her hands shake as she held the papers. If this evidence was real, it meant her grandfather had been trying to protect the whole place, not just himself. Then she saw a small folded paper at the bottom of the box. She opened it slowly. It was a letter written by her grandfather. The handwriting was shaky, but strong enough to read. It was addressed to "My dear grandchild." Mira felt tears rise in her eyes before she even started reading. The letter spoke about fear. Her grandfather feared that someone powerful wanted the land for a secret project. He said he had discovered something that could damage that person's name forever. He wrote that he was hiding the evidence because he did not know whom to trust. He warned that if anything happened to him, the truth must come out. Even if it was dangerous, Mira sat down on a wooden crate. Her chest felt heavy and her eyes filled with tears. She had never known her grandfather was carrying such a burden. She wished she had visited him more. She wished she had asked more questions when he was alive. But she also felt a fire rise inside her chest. She wanted to protect the truth he had fought for. She placed the letter back into the box and picked up all the documents. She decided she would make copies of everything and hide them in different places. She could not risk losing the evidence. When she climbed out of the basement and returned to the main barn floor, she stopped suddenly. The barn door was not fully closed. She remembered closing it tightly before coming down. A cold chill moved across her arms. Someone had been there. She looked around quickly. At first, she saw nothing, but then she noticed soft footprints near the entrance. They were too large to be Aaron's. They were fresh. They were not there yesterday. She stepped outside and looked around the field. The wind moved the tall grass gently, but she felt watched. She walked toward the house quickly, her heart beating fast. She checked every room before calling her son's name. Aaron ran out from the kitchen with a smile. "Mommy, look, I drew a big tree," he said happily, holding a paper. Mira hugged him tightly with relief. But she knew now the danger was real. Someone was watching the farm. Someone was looking for the same evidence she had found. She made breakfast for Aaron while her mind worked fast. She needed help. She needed someone trustworthy. But who could she trust? The officer seemed kind, but the documents showed that local officials had been paid. She could not risk trusting anyone from town yet. After breakfast, Mira told Aaron to stay inside the house and play near the window so she could see him. Then she took the documents and walked toward the small guest house on the farm. It was an old structure, slightly damaged, but still strong enough to be a hiding place. She pushed open the old door. Dust rose up into the air. She walked inside and found a drawer under the bed. She placed half of the documents there, then covered them with old blankets so they were not visible. She kept the other half with her. On the walk back, she saw something strange. A black car at the far end of the dirt road. It was not moving. It was just parked there. Dark windows. No sign of the driver. It was not a local car. She had never seen it before. Her heartbeat jumped. She slowly walked back inside the house and closed the main door. She peeked through the window. The car stayed still for another minute, then slowly drove away. She knew this was not normal. Someone was watching. For the next hour, Mira sat at the kitchen table with the letters and papers spread around her. She read every line carefully. She read about land pressure, forced sales, and secret payments. She read about a plan to build a large private research center on the land. A center that the billionaire wanted to keep hidden from the public. Something about water supply control. Something about private ownership of natural resources. Her grandfather had written that the billionaire wanted to use the land for a project that could give him control over the local water supply. If that were true, it would affect everyone in the region. The people, the farms, the animals. The truth was bigger than she expected. Mira felt fear again, but she also felt brave. A single mother with almost no money, no strong connections, and no protection. But she had something more powerful. She had the truth. In the afternoon, she took Aaron outside to play under the shade of a tree. She kept watching the road. Every sound made her alert. She stayed close to her son. Aaron played happily with small stones and leaves. To him, the world was simple and full of wonder. Mira wished she could give him the same peace later. She decided to walk to the farthest corner of the farmland. Her grandfather had built a small wooden shed there years ago. She wanted to check if he had hidden something else. She took Aaron with her. They walked, holding hands through the tall grass. The sun was warm, and the wind was steady. When they reached the shed, Mira pushed the door open. The smell of old wood filled the air. Inside, she saw old farming tools, ropes, and barrels. She carefully examined each corner, knocking on walls to check for hidden panels. Then she found it. A wooden board on the floor sounded hollow. She knelt down and lifted it. Under the board was a small metal container, old and covered in dust. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a flash drive, wrapped in cloth. A small note was placed beside it. The note said, "For safety, keep hidden." Mira felt her breath stop. If the papers were dangerous enough, then this must be even more important. She closed the container and hid it in her jacket. Suddenly, she heard a sound outside. A rustle. A soft step. She froze. Someone was near the shed. She looked around quickly, grabbed Aaron's hand, and whispered, "Stay close to me." She stepped outside with slow, careful steps. At first, she saw nothing. Then she saw movement behind the trees. Someone was there. Someone watching her. Her heart pounded. But she stood tall. She was not going to run. This was her land. Her grandfather's land. And she was not going to let fear push her away. The person moved again. But before Mira could see their face, they disappeared into the trees. The night after the strange figure appeared near the shed was uneasy for Mira. The quiet of the farm felt different now. Every sound seemed louder. Every shadow seemed deeper. Mira put Aaron to sleep early and sat beside the window, looking outside at the dark field. She held the small flash drive in her hand. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like a final key that her grandfather had trusted her to keep safe. She thought about what she had discovered over the last few days: the basement documents, the map of forced land buying, the secret notes, and now the flash drive. All of it was pointing toward one truth. Someone powerful had wanted the land for a private project. Someone rich enough to silence people. Someone confident that no one would dare speak against him. But her grandfather had spoken against him. And now Mira had stepped into the same path. She wondered if the unknown person watching the farm worked for the billionaire. She wondered if more people would come. But she also knew something clearly. She could not run away. If she did, her grandfather's efforts would disappear. The farm would fall into wrong hands. The truth would vanish forever. She looked at Aaron sleeping peacefully. His small face glowed softly in the dim light. Mira brushed his hair gently and whispered, "I will keep you safe. I will keep our home safe." In the early morning, when the first soft rays of sunlight touched the windows, Mira made a decision. She needed help, but she had to choose someone she could trust. She thought about Officer Ramon. Even though she had doubts, she remembered his calm behavior. He had known her grandfather. He had respected him. She decided she would carefully test if he was honest before leaving. She placed the flash drive inside a metal lunchbox and hid it deep under the wooden floor in her room. She kept only the letter from her grandfather in her pocket. She took Aaron with her, holding his hand tightly as she walked toward the small police station in town. The town was simple and quiet. People were opening their shops. Bread smell came from a bakery. A few farmers walked by with carts. Mira tried to look calm, but her heart was beating fast. She stepped into the police station. Officer Ramon noticed her immediately. "Mira, you are here so early. Is everything okay?" he asked with a gentle expression. She took a deep breath. "Officer, I need to talk to you about something important." "Very important." He offered her a chair and asked Aaron to sit near the table with some drawing paper. Mira watched her son first, making sure he was in her sight. Then she spoke slowly. "My grandfather left something behind. Something he hid because he thought someone would try to take it. I found documents about the land, about a rich man trying to buy it by pressure. I found maps, letters, warnings." Officer Ramon listened quietly. His eyes did not narrow or widen. He listened without interrupting her. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I knew your grandfather was hiding something important," he said softly. "He came to me once, many years ago. He said there were things happening with land buying, but he asked me not to write anything in the official record because he did not trust some people in town." Mira felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that he believed her. Fear, because it meant her grandfather had truly been in danger. "Do you have the documents with you?" the officer asked. Mira shook her head. "No, I kept them hidden. I cannot risk losing them." Officer Ramon nodded. "Good. You must protect them. This is not small. If the evidence is true, it can bring trouble, but it can also protect our entire region." He stood up and closed the door of his office. Then he lowered his voice. "Mira, the billionaire you were talking about, has influence. He has connections far beyond this town. You must be careful. Someone could be watching even right now." Her heart felt tight again. "What should I do?" The officer thought for a moment. "You should get the documents and let me make official copies. Once those copies enter the legal system, no one can make them disappear. But you should not travel alone. And you should not stay in exposed places." Mira looked at Aaron drawing a tree on paper. She needed to be brave, but she also needed to be wise. After some discussion, they made a plan. Mira would bring the documents to the station the next morning. Officer Ramon promised to remain near the farm that night to observe the area. Mira thanked him and walked out with Green. But something unexpected happened. As she reached her old truck parked near the road, she noticed a man standing across the street. He wore simple clothes, but his eyes were fixed on her. He did not look away. He did not pretend to be busy. He watched her with a calm expression, but it did not feel friendly. Mira's breath caught. She lifted Aaron into the truck and sat inside. She locked the doors and pretended not to notice the man, but her hands shook on the steering wheel. She drove away quickly, checking the mirror every few seconds. The stranger did not follow, but the fear stayed with her. When they reached the farm, Mira locked every door. She checked the windows. She looked for footprints outside the barn. She felt like the land was holding its breath. She spent the afternoon cleaning the basement and organizing the papers. She placed them into 2 separate envelopes, one for the officer, one to keep hidden. While Aaron played near her, she tried her best to stay calm. She kept smiling at him, even when her mind was heavy. But near evening, before sunset, something happened that confirmed she was in real danger. A loud sound came from the barn. A thud, a heavy one. Mira's heart leaped. She grabbed Aaron quickly and rushed inside the house. She locked the door and looked through the window. The barn door was open. She had closed it earlier. She could not see anyone inside from the window. She slowly reached for her phone. Her fingers trembled as she called Officer Ramon. He answered quickly. "Myra, what happened?" "Someone is in the barn," she whispered. "I heard something." "The door is open. Keep the doors locked. Stay inside with your child." "I am coming in a few minutes," he said. Mira held Aaron close while waiting. Every minute felt like an hour. Finally, she heard a police car on the road. The officer arrived and went into the barn with a flashlight. After a few minutes, he walked back to the house and knocked gently. Myra opened the door with fear still in her eyes. "There was someone inside earlier," the officer said. "The footprints are fresh." They searched the place, but they left before I reached. Mira felt her knees weaken. If the officer had not come quickly, something worse might have happened. He told her he would stay near the farm throughout the night. In his car, watching from the road, Mira thanked him. That night was the longest night she had ever lived. Every sound made her alert. She slept lightly, her hand always near Rind. At sunrise, she woke with a new strength. Fear had stayed, but her courage was stronger. She prepared the documents and took Aaron by the hand. Officer Ramon was waiting outside. They went to the police station and made official copies. The officer sent them to trusted legal departments. Once the papers were registered, they were safe. They could not be removed or hidden. Then they opened the flash drive. Inside were video recordings. Old ones, but clear enough. Recordings of meetings between company agents and certain officials. Talks about land pressure strategies. Conversations about taking control of natural water sources. Proof that would hurt the billionaire's reputation deeply. Mira felt her heart pound as she watched. Her grandfather had saved these. He had known the truth would come out one day. Officer Ramon spoke calmly. "This changes everything. This evidence is strong. It will reach the right people." "You have done a brave thing, Mira." She looked at the screen, thinking of her grandfather's face, his gentle smile, his strong voice. "I only followed what he wanted," she said softly. The next few days passed with more calm. No more strange cars. No more footsteps. No more shadows near the shed. The farm felt open again, like the land could breathe. News slowly spread across the town. People heard that someone had tried to pressure landowners. They learned that Mira's grandfather had fought to protect the place. People came to visit the farm. They brought food, tools, and warm words. They thanked Mira for standing brave. The billionaire's company faced questions, investigations, and legal action. Their project was stopped. The land was declared protected property for local farmers. One evening, Myra sat on the porch with Aaron on her lap. The sunset painted the sky in soft orange color. A calm wind moved the grass around the farm. Aaron pointed at the tractor and shouted happily, "Mommy, look!" The tractor. Mira smiled. Her heart finally felt light. This land was now safe. Her child was safe. Her grandfather's truth had risen, just as he had hoped, and Mira knew something deeply. She had arrived on the farm as a broke single mother with worries heavier than her own future. But she had become something stronger, a guardian of her family's legacy, a protector of the truth. The farm was not just land. It was courage. It was history. It was a promise.